Hello everyone, I'm Kat and welcome to the Unicorn Painter once again. Today we are gonna be painting some Tyranids. They are not for me, they are for my partner's army that has been growing a little bit lately, and I want it to be a fully painted army for this new edition so we can just play 2000 point games. And she has options to take when she wants to make like smaller lists or anything else like that. Before we go on, I would like you to just leave me a comment, like how long do you think it will take to paint the whole combat patrol? Yes, you've done that? Okay, let's go. It's not a super complicated scheme and it's not the choices I would have made for this, but it's something that my partner enjoys, so I will be happy painting them. I hope you like it. I hope you take some things from it. I think a lot of the techniques to paint the skin and the softer bits are really usable with any skin, just changing a few colors. And the carapace as well, you can swap it and just choose a different color and you'll have very lovely Tyranids painted really quick. Yes? Okay, let's go. We start by covering like 90% of what we primed all black with Nocturnal Red from Vallejo. This is just to establish an undertone to the skin and make it more lively, so anything that we'll put on top has that liveliness quality to it. I decided to prime them with just a roll gun instead of like using the airbrush, and got the same finish, so I saved quite a bit of time on that. I think the red just adds that bit of extra richness to the finished paint scheme that if you simply put the bone white as we're doing here instead over black, it will give you like a really desaturated and kind of flat looking skin, like skin, but like soft bits of the Tyranids, you know, softer, as in not the carapace. But at the same time, I think bone white, this is just the airbrush version, gives it a nice base coat for anything that will become the carapace later on. We're not aiming for 100% coverage of the skin, but more like 90% again, just using a bit thin down, so I can leave some parts a bit more reddish than others to establish that contrast between like the joints and softer parts of the skin. You can be a bit creative with it, you know, you can be like, oh, you know, I'm just gonna leave more red parts on this side or that other, or you can just fully cover it and then reintroduce it with the steps that we're gonna be taking after. But I think it's a really nice practice on like creating an underpainting and then adding colors on top of it, because you could easily change it. You can go with a purple if you want it more like a sicklish skin, and then do the airbrushing with the same color and it will give you like a slightly different result. So you can experiment a lot with this same technique even if it's with different colors. Here I realized I kind of lost a little bit too much of that redness on the joints and some of the softer parts, so I reintroduced it with some blood red speed paint, diluted like 50-50 with airbrush thinner, and I established anything that is like joints, connection points, the tentacles on the face of the silly chin stealers, anything that would see a lot of movement or a lot of softness to it gets that reddish undertone now reapplied. You can go much stronger than I'm going with at this time. I thought this one were like a bit more delicate, so I wanted to not go super crazy, but the bigger Tyranids that I've painted, I went a bit more strongly with them, so you can be like, oh, you know, these joints seem much more heavy lifting than these other ones. Just a silly one because like no one is gonna take care on Warhammer, like, oh, that kind of does make sense or not. So choose my headcanon, I want to assume. You can also use it to shade a little bit the underzones, as I was doing with the tail on this one, to create more like a, oh, you know, this is the reddish part, like doesn't, it's just more like a shade by contrast instead of like a shade by darkening it. After that, I needed more definition. I diluted Hive Dweller Purple with 50/50 with Speed Paint Medium to create like a thin down heavy wash instead of like a proper purplish one. You could use maybe the old Rookie Eye Violet and it would also work. The new one, it's maybe too thin, or maybe Purple Tone by Army Painter would get the same result. But the idea is to use it on anything that we've used the red to create that extra bit of definition, or the I don't know exactly what they are called or if they have a name, but the air bands on their sides of the skin, you know, like these sides that have like a little bit of ridging to them. You can just add it to it and it will add a nice bit of contrasting color to the skin. And of course, anything like in this case joined with a weapon, especially those, I try to make them like very purplish with this, so they seem more like use, more like articulation. You can use it to put it on the gums of any of the miniatures, so it will add a bit of extra depth into their faces and their mouth, and you can just pick out the individual teeth afterwards with some highlight. And after spending a lot of time with the skin and not wanting to paint the carapace by brush, I pull out the masking tape and spend like, I think 40 minutes masking the whole combat patrol, well, most of the gene stealers and the little spore side mines, I think they're called, to create a more easily workable surface that I don't have to worry about overspilling when I'm using the airbrush later. Even if I'm really careful and I'm really good at using it, it's always a bit of a risk. I'm shooting Forest Skin. Again, it's a Nocturnal color by Vallejo, which I don't have like an exact match in any other range, which is like a slightly greenish, if you want to put it that way, khaki color. So it's a nice warmer base tone for anything that it's bone. So I painted some of the Dreadwing, not Dreadwing, I don't remember now the specific name for the Dark Angels are bone colored Deathwing. I think they're Deathwing. The bigger pieces I decided not to mask with the masking putty because I was I think careful enough to just not hit the parts that I wanted, and whatever bit of overspill wouldn't change too much the tones that are already achieved. After that, we just simply pull out again bone color, like bone white by Vallejo, the airbrush version, and just establish some highlights on places that will look realistic, but at the same time like super worried. Just try to think of the miniature as a reflecting surface, but at the same time, like bone is not a really shiny material, so it's just a very diffuse highlight just to create a bit more depth when we apply the washes and the contrast paint on top of it later. And one of the most satisfying parts of the whole project is peeling off the masking tape. It's like, hey, voila, magic, there is a miniature under all that black goo. On a side note, if it's really warm, you could get like a goo covered monstrosity of a miniature if you leave the masking tape on when it's really warm or for like a long period of time. It's not a stable thing, so it will melt down. Not melt down, but just like still droop. After that weird tangent, we pull out a 50-50 of Bony Matter by Army Painter and Skeleton Horde to create like a rich tone that will go on top of the skeleton parts, the more the carapace ones, the claws, and anything that's like more heartbeat, you know, like the proper carapace to simplify it. I am quite happy with this mix of color. It's like a really rich, but at the same time, if you had, as I did, a little bit of speed paint medium, it will become really stable, so it won't pull that much, even if you're working really fast as I was, and you can just use it, have it done in a really short amount of time. Even though, make sure that you pull off anything that's starting to pull with a damp brush, like anything, even your finger if you want. If not, it will create some weird pulling that will really fucking dark, and it won't look all that good. I got that in a really part that I couldn't specifically see when I left them to dry, so I had to fix that a bit later. After this, I just diluted a little bit of that same Bony Matter to add more brownish tone to the whole carapace and to deepen a little bit the recesses and the shadows and just dunk it all over. In this case, I went with like 75% speed paint medium and 25% of Bony Matter, maybe a brown tone or even Agate Earthshade will give you a similar result if you've seen it just a little bit. But what we're trying to get is some extra depth in the whole carapace and a bit more of contrasting tones between the higher part and the lower ones. We go into the unifying step of dry brushing. I always find a lot of mental peace in dry brushing minis. This case is Tomb King Tan. That's a weird name. By the Army Painter. Is a really nice desaturated bone color that I use to establish like most of the highlight on the whole army before adding just a little bit of pale sand to create the maximum highlights to it, just on the tippy top of the edges and some of the claws and the more sharper bits of the miniature. Still with the same dry brush, still really quick, just using Dark Sea Blue. It's an old one from the Mortal Color range, like the old one, and it separates the pigment really weird, but it gives you a really nice tone for creating the bases. When you use it through the airbrush, it gives a very different color, at least the one that I have if you use it by a brush, so I apply it with the airbrush. Probably it's because it's really old. At this point I was like, oh, I think I need a bit more depth in some parts, so I used a quick gen, like a sort of contrast thing from Iki, the I think it's vampire flesh, diluted a little bit to create a more deep color on the wings and anything that was like gums and some of the more fleshy parts of the miniature, like all the tender bits. And then we go back to the base with just on the edges of the base, which will give us like a really nice turquoisey greenish base, And as I cannot stay still, I go back to the wings and some other parts and add a little bit of red to them in the eyes and in the wings before drenching the miniature in a lot of blood effects, in this case True Blood by the Army Painter, which I found it really nice. The only comment on that is before I go with the blood, I matte varnish the whole miniature so it will be protected, and it gives a really nice differentiation between the matte and the really shiny parts of the blood. And then I simply use some black by Vallejo to create the edges of the bases, and we are done. Well, that was it. Today we painted some Tyranids. I asked you at the beginning how long you'd think it would take me to paint the whole combat patrol, and I don't know how much you said, but I don't think that you would have guessed like 9 hours and a half from just straight plastic, priming them, to getting them done with the blood effects and everything. It's a kind of simple paint scheme, but I really like it. It's different to what I would have picked for them, but like I try to make the scheme that my partner has chosen for them work, in a sense that they have not as much contrast between the different parts as I would have put in a commission. At the same time, I think it works. It's easy. It's easily replicable, and it doesn't take a lot of time nor a lot of practice with like complicated techniques or anything else. And if you want, you can take them to the next level. You can add more scratches, more highlights, deepen a bit the shadows, which is what we're going to be doing next week when we paint the 2 Hive Tyrants that I have for her. So again, thank you for watching. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye!